In this screen capture video, I'm going to show you how to use Excel to do a lot of calculations very quickly and efficiently. These days, using a calculator to do calculations is pretty much obsolete. It's ripe for error and takes a lot more time. One thing to know is Excel is really good at recognizing patterns. So for example, say I want a list of 30 numbers 1 through 30. I don't have to type all those down. I can just type the first several. 1, 2, 3. Then I can highlight these, point the cursor at the bottom right hand corner, click down and drag down, and Excel has recognized the pattern here and filled in the numbers. Similarly, if I wanted a set of numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, I wanted that to go all the way down that same pattern, I could do the same thing, and Excel will anticipate what you want. Now let's look at a concrete problem. Say you invest $1,000 in the year 2015 and you want to know how much money you would have after 30 years, assuming that each year there's a 5% interest that you receive. So let's start with 2015. That's the first year. And enter each additional year like that. Highlight this, drag down. So the 30th year is 2044. Call that the year. And now in the very first year we start with $1,000. Now this is the kind of thing that requires repetitive calculations because each year you have to recalculate the percentage. But it's the same calculation every time. And so it's a good type of thing to use for Excel because it can be automated. We can only do it just once and then drag down and have Excel repeat that calculation. Remember, with formulas you start out with the equal sign, and in this case the formula is going to be simple. We're just going to take the money we have, and I should remind us that each number here is going to be the amount of our investment, okay, at the end of that particular year. So if we put in 1,000 at the beginning of 2015, then what do we have at the beginning of 2016? We have $1,000 plus we have 5% of 1,000, which is our interest. So it would be 1,000 multiplied by, note the multiplication sign is the asterisk above the 8, multiplied by 5%, like that. And naturally we have 1,050. Note too that in the formula bar here it shows us the addresses of the formula. It's D2, the address D2 plus, and notice I made an error there. Though I did this on purpose to show you. I put the $1,000 in there, but actually I don't want that. I want instead the address D2 in that formula, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. Whenever the address is in there, it's just going to copy whatever quantity is in there in that address. Now, at the beginning of the year 2017, how much money do I have? Well, I can highlight this cell here and drag down, and then Excel has recalculated that formula, except this time it's done it on D3. And now we can go back to the reason why we need D2 in that formula. The general formula here is the amount of money you had at the beginning plus the interest, okay? And each year the amount of money you have at the beginning, of course, changes. The amount of the money you have at the beginning is simply the amount of money that you had at the end of the previous year. And so we want that number to change. We don't want it to be just $1,000, which is why I wouldn't want to put $1,000 here. I wouldn't want to put D2, because then when I go to this cell here, that address has changed to D3. And this is something called relative referencing, where Excel anticipates formula changes that you presumably want to make. It's not always correct, and you do have to check it to make sure it's correct, but it's often pretty intuitive. Then I can drag this down the next year, and the next year, and all the way down to the bottom. Each time, note that Excel updates the formula. What Excel realizes here is that what you're doing is you're adding the previous value to 5% times the previous value, and so it's updating what the previous value is in each case. And so we see after 30 years your money has quadrupled, more than quadrupled, at 5% interest rate. Now I want to show you something else you can do to make Excel a little bit more flexible in calculating this. We assumed a percentage rate of 5%, but say we don't know what the percentage rate is going to be, or we just want to see how the money will change depending on different percentage rates. Well, what I can do here is use something called a named range, which I've talked about in previous screen capture video. A named range in Excel means that I can basically take any cell or group of cells and give it a name by typing it in this box up here that has the address. Let's come over here, and what I'm going to do is write in the interest rate of 5%. And I'm going to call this my interest rate. I'm going to label it over here, although I don't really need to do that, that's just for myself. But I'm also going to label it here for Excel. I'm going to call that the rate. And that's a named range. And what a named range means is that then I can use this name here instead of the 5% in these formulas. Named ranges are for use in formulas mainly. You can see all your named ranges if you go to the formulas menu and click on Name Manager, and you'll see the rate. And what it refers to cell H5 in sheet 1, and the value currently is 5%. So if I go into this formula, delete 5%, and put in rate, and you can see it shows up in the drop down menu here. Press enter, and then I'm going to drag that formula all the way down to the bottom. Nothing changes because the percentage rate didn't change, but instead of the 5%, instead it has rate, which is color coordinated and color coded green. What this means is I could change the interest rate and then change these calculations very quickly. Let's say I'm very optimistic and I'm thinking I'm going to get 8% annually. Now numbers change, and I end up, instead of quadrupling my investment, it goes up 9 times. Instead, say I'm particularly pessimistic. I think that the interest rate is only going to keep pace with inflation, say at 2.5%. It rounds it up here. We can always change that by adding more decimal place, that, and it's still calculated at the 2.5% rate. In that case, over 30 years, the money doubled. So using named ranges can make things easier because it can allow you to change. If there's one number in a formula that's repeated over and over again, you can just change this one number and change the calculation completely. And this is just another way Excel can be harnessed to do repetitive calculations quickly, efficiently, and accurately.